Today we're gonna draw a poppy and it will be so much fun. They look like coffee filters on a stem. Alright, so a quick rundown on supplies. I'm using this Fabriano watercolor pad. It's hot press. It's nice and smooth, and what happens is I can use a waterproof pen on this and then add color later, and the paper is thick enough to handle the extra media. But you can also work on mixed media paper or honestly just computer paper for this tutorial. Like really we just want to practice drawing. So that's that. Next up, I'm using the Tombow Mono drawing pen. I adore Tombow products, and this drawing pen is really great. It's a felt tip and the size is 8. You can definitely get the smaller sizes if you want to add some fine details to your flower drawing. I'm using the Tombow Mono pencil in HB. And lastly, I'm using the Light Touch plastic eraser from Tombow. So all of the supplies can be found linked below in the description. And you can also find the PDF that matches this class where you can follow along. I basically break it down in a very easy step-by-step process, and you can just copy my drawing to really get that practice in. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot. We have a follow along on Instagram, so basically you can post your drawings from this class using the hashtag Watts Floral Series, and that way I can see your drawings and get all excited that you took my class. And the other thing is, if you haven't seen the first video in this floral drawing series, I recommend watching that first so that you can see how I kind of break down flowers into simple shapes. Okay, that's it. Let's go. Okay, so let's start drawing our poppy. First, I'm going to sketch it so that you can see how I'm kind of interpreting the reference into an illustration, and then we'll ink it together. Today we're doing one view of the poppy, and if you want to see a side view of the poppy, you can download the PDF down in the description box. Alright, so I have some reference that I licensed from Adobe Stock. It's not the best printout of it, but I like to print them out in black and white just to have a little bit more contrast to look at while I'm drawing from the pictures. So the way I like to simplify a poppy is basically to find those 4 to 6 petals that they typically have and just draw those and then add in the details of that fan-like effect that you see on a lot of the petals. So I'm going to start with the center, and this is the bounding box for the stamen, and then in the very center is where those stigmas are. And then I make a bounding box for all of the petals to kind of be contained within. From here, they typically have 2 petals that sit across from each other, almost like they're going down a river on a raft, sort of like that. And then the next 2 petals come up behind those here. And then I like to draw those last 2 coming from behind one petal and then back to the other side of the one across from it. Okay. Alright, and then if you want to create the fold of a petal, an easy way to do that is to basically draw the petal as if you were seeing the edge as a smooth curve, because this is actually the underbelly of the petal, and then what would be these ruffled edges would now be towards the center, right? So if we have those ruffled edges, oh yeah. On this one, we would draw it a little bit shorter to show that it's kind of folding up. And then we would have those ruffles inverted going towards the center of the flower. And that creates an easy little folded petal effect, right? All right, so then the stem of a poppy is this long, slender stem, and they're so much fun. Sometimes you'll see them in vintage illustrations like Art Nouveau and things like that, where it's kind of very designy, you know, and it's just such a cool, you can really play up the drama of the stem. So I have my stem here. It's kind of got a little bit of an S curve that gets straight at the bottom. And then I typically go with 3 leaves if I'm just drawing a flower that I'm kind of stylizing, because if you work in odd numbers, people tend to be drawn to that in a composition. So I'm like, okay, I'll make 3 leaves then. And then if you look at the leaves on a poppy, they almost kind of look like flames. So when I see this, I'm like, oh my goodness, that looks hard to draw. So I simplify it by creating the center, and then I kind of see this leaf shape that kind of gets repeated, right? And then I can add those sort of flame shapes to those leaves, but we have that structure to work off of to keep us from making this, like, you know, kind of situation. So that's kind of how I draw the leaves to a poppy. So here we have a little bit of a fold in the leaf, so I'm going to draw the underbelly of the leaf and then have those shapes come towards the center of the leaf where it's folding up. I also add a little bit of details to the flower that you can do when you go to ink, but if you like to see it ahead of time in the sketch, then you can go ahead and add those. But basically these are the top of the stamens, and then these are the lines that indicate those folds that kind of make the that crepe paper kind of feel that poppies have. They're kind of like coffee filters. All right, let's move on to inking this poppy. All right, so I have the sketch pre-drawn onto the watercolor paper. And if you download the PDF, you can see that I break that down into the same steps that I'm following in this video. I always start with the very center when possible. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. All right, and from there I'll draw the tops of those stamen surrounding the center. And these are basically oval shapes that are kind of radiating from that center. Now on a lot of poppies, the petals are almost like so wide that they kind of curl up and cover each other up, but sometimes you can find them where it's pretty visually easy to see where one petal is across from the other and then you've got 2 more. So that's how we're going to draw this one, but you can definitely kind of curl those petals around and get them to really cover each other up once you kind of get the practice of drawing them in the simplified version. Okay. Now here I'm drawing the underbelly of this petal because it's going to be curled up. And then I added the ruffles of the end of the petal towards the center to make it look like it's curving up. So notice how I just kind of allowed that last set of petals to be a wavy line that sort of surrounded the center petals. All right, so from here I add some detail lines that give that crepe paper effect that you see on poppies. And I think less is better whenever you're kind of doing this because you can easily overdo it and it becomes hard to, you know, you can't really take ink away. And those lines will just sort of radiate from that center. They're basically coming out of the place that they grew from, right? Ta-da! All right, and then I add some coming from the top. And I typically kind of leave this like blank space between the top lines and the bottom ones, and this kind of gives a little bit of a light hitting the flower illusion, and it's really nice. Anytime you're adding these kind of detail lines, the goal is to try to make them go from thick to thin and be slightly curved so that they feel more natural. Alright, for the stem, I do a big S curve. And you can get really creative with the shape of the stem. Alright, for those leaves, I'm going to draw myself some guidelines back in so I can kind of see where I'm going with these sort of fiery shaped leaves. And again, having that folded leaf sort of like that. You know, I see this leaf and I actually want to change the position of it. I feel like it's kind of lonely down here. I'm like, you come up here with everybody else. It's okay. All right. All right, so let's start inking these leaves. If it helps you to know how many of these little flame shapes to do on the leaf, I just do 3. Sometimes I do more than that when I feel kind of wild. But that base structure is super important because this could so easily become a very blobby situation. Here I'm just kind of letting those back ones poke through a little bit. So I'm basically imitating the effect of a brush pen with a pen that has a consistent line weight. And so what I tend to do is just kind of pick something to be thicker and keep that consistent throughout the flower. So personally, I like to add a little bit of thickness that goes towards the base of the petals to kind of indicate that it's still a little bit thicker down there. And then I also do that to these top areas that bump out the most. And then in the center of a poppy, this area becomes very dark, so I'm going to add a lot of contrast to that. And then I'll be adding a little bit of extra line weight to here and here. And then the same kind of effect that I do with the petals, I'll be doing to the leaves. Now I'm erasing the drawing, and you definitely want to wait until the ink dries before you do this. Alright, so there you have it. We have a poppy drawing that uses a pen that just has a consistent line weight. Alright, I can't wait to show you some versions of the poppy where I added color in afterwards. Let's check them out. These are some drawings I did using the same technique with the poppies. This side view is actually in the PDF. If you want to download that, it's in the links like in the description below the video. So I did this one with Tombow dual brush pens, and then I added some water to create this kind of watercolory effect. I love those pens so much. Here this one looks a little more traditional in color. Okay, so here, you know, I took some ink. Basically, I wet the entire inside of the poppy, and then I dropped ink into it, and then that ink went up to the edges and stopped because it only stayed within the wet areas. So that's how I kind of created that effect, and I did the same with the leaves. Here, this one was super fun. If I took this into being a final illustration, I would definitely kind of clean it up in Photoshop. This one, I used a combination of the Tombow dual brush pens and watercolor and a little bit of ink. Like, this was the one where I just played and had fun and hoped for the best. So I kind of did the flower first, then the leaves, and then I did this big wet wash that stopped around the flower so it wouldn't, you know, muddy up that color. And then after that dried, you know, I dropped some ink into that. After that dried, I did some swooping dry strokes. And then after that dried, I added the splatters. And that's the benefit of drawing on watercolor paper. And if you want to draw on smooth watercolor paper, then I would get hot press. That tends to have less of a texture and it has a smoother finish. So there you have it. I had so much fun teaching you how to draw poppies in a stylized kind of way, and I hope this makes it a little easy for you to kind of remember it based on simple shapes and redraw it onto whatever fun project you're working on. So if you like this video, please shoot me a thumbs up and hit subscribe so that I can keep growing this channel. I have so many ideas for YouTube videos, and I just really want to be able to share them with you. So I would love it if you followed. All right, see you on the next video. See you on the next video.